Hello.
Hi. My name is Nicholas Port. Maybe relevant for this conversation. I'm the neuro consultant at Indiana University in the athletics department. So 50% of my patients are female, 40% of them get concussions, or 40% of the total individuals who get concussions will be female. We have been adding various sex things into our studies. And so I just filled out your survey and hope to learn more. I know that there are some tests beyond the ovulation antigen test for where a female is in their cycle that are urine tests. Do you guys have any experience with that? Do those work any better? Do they meet laboratory standards without, my problem with doing endocrine panels is that a lot of my athletes, shockingly enough, are needle phobic, like almost 50%. So when I force them to do blood draws, they don't have a choice. But if I'm doing a research study, it's a problem. So I'm looking for other solutions.
Have you come across the mirror device?
That might be one of the ones that I've heard about, and that's what I wanted to learn more about. You guys will know a lot more than me.
Yes, so I'm going to be, full disclosure, I haven't used it yet, but I'm going to be using it later in the year. And I've had colleagues who have used it and been very impressed by the data that it produces. You still have to consider the time delay because it's hormone metabolites that are coming out of the urine rather than circulating hormones that you'd get from the bloods. Yep. But I think that could be a really great way to collect hormonal data that's non-invasive, and it collects everything except testosterone. Right. So luteinizing, follicular stimulating hormone as well. Right. Any other thoughts?
I mean, if you're if you're looking for hormone values themselves, then this is not going to be a helpful comment. But
mostly cycle is where we've been thinking. Because there's a really good study out of University of Rochester from Jeff Baziran's lab where it was all emergency room patients. So they had blood draw and they knew exactly where their female mild TBIs were in their cycle and showed that there was a protective effect of the follicular phase. And that's what one of the things I'd like to reproduce with our collegiate athletes to see if that holds up.
Yeah, I mean, because one hormone test is not going to tell you where someone is in their phase because it could be totally different from that person from cycle to cycle or between people. So it's a good characterizing of like if someone has high hormones or something. But I mean, honestly, there are so many apps that they can just track their cycle, and that gives you a way better idea of where they are based on the day that they are relative to past cycle lengths and things like that. So if you're interested in phase information, then just
We do collect that, and almost all of our collegiate athletes do use an app, and therefore they can pull out their phone and tell us exactly where they are. So that's actually very, very common. I mean, effectively everybody.
Great.
So.
That's great.
But I was curious about these new urine tools, so that's why I had to ask.
Yeah, just a quick adding on that. So the mirror, I think it's a very nice tool, and it's awesome to have data from an entire cycle. But the problem is also costs, right? I mean, can you afford it? I think it's 200 or 300 euros, one of those machines. What we have been doing, so we are mostly interested in finding ovulation. And there are also LH plus estradiol tests. They are slightly more expensive than the normal LH tests. And we were also quite happy with earlier detection and more precise detection of the ovulation using these. They're like €3, so $3.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to read a couple of questions from the app. So the first one is, gender identity isn't temporarily static and may also be context dependent. How do you suggest to account for this? Now, I think that is a really good question. I actually don't have the answer for you. Does anyone else have anything that they could speak to? I would love to throw it to the audience if there's anyone who has any opinions on this. I know that gender identity, I think, is quite nicely captured in some of these big data sets like the ABCD study where it's captured on a continuum, because I think that's also really important. It's not something that's super categorical. So that's a good way of capturing it. But the fact that it can be different across time is an excellent question.
And in our current version of the questionnaire, we ask about current gender identity, and yeah, we acknowledge that can change. So it will pop up in the longitudinal form as well. And if there are differences there, then that's just another variable that can change over time.
I mean, again, it's a good question, and it's just a factor of like, we don't yet know how, we don't know. So the thing is, we're just trying to figure out how to capture the information in a way that can get us one step closer to be like, oh, okay, we should ask this way. Or, so it's perfect is the enemy of getting anything done. So we're figuring out how to ask it now, but that will be something that we develop over time. And we need input from people who have the understanding to ask this question of like, so it's not static. And so this is why we want to bring everyone into the fold so we can ask you about your experiences and how you conceive of these variables, because we are all actively trying to figure out which variables are relevant, and within those variables, what about them is relevant to our questions of interest. Anyway.
I have another question for you too. So for the data connection standard, how are you interacting with survey design experts to follow the best practice?
Yeah, so we've got a UI UX expert, Natalie, who's helping us do all of the piloting and user testing and making sure that the survey is accessible and inclusive for a broad number of people. So yeah, we're trying really, really hard to make sure that we're representing the items in a way that is true to the science and medical literature, but also so that these items are, not full of jargon and full of really technicalities that make it so not usable that people can't give their data. So it's a balance, and that's that cycle that we're talking about. So we'll create the items, do the user testing, come back, edit the items, do more user testing until both our leaders and experts and our members of the public are happy. And then that's the version that we'll move forward with. But it's really important.
All right, another question. Do you have any advice or insights on studying hormones within the context of neuroinflammation? It's a good question. I don't think any of us work in the neuroinflammation space. I am fascinated by it though. And I think that considering sex hormones in that space is very important. Was there any specific question or just insights in general? And throw to the audience. Does anyone have experience in this space that they could talk to?
So I do agree that we also in this field of neuroinflammation have to do a lot more, since all contraceptive use, for instance, is also associated with changes in neuroinflammation markers, but also premenstrual dysphoric disorder. We see some changes there also with depression. So I think it's highly relevant, and sex hormones do interact with neuroinflammatory markers. I myself haven't done any studies on that yet, but I think this is a really important future avenue to uncover more about the workings there.
I mean, something we've been working on is collecting blood data both for hormone measurements, but also looking at the proteome, which gives you the understanding of the inflammatory markers that you may be interested in. So this may be, you may already be doing that, but yeah, basically we're trying to get a handle on which variables are, which proteins, which pathways are impacted by different hormonal states. So when we talk about sex-specific factors and reproductive factors, it is not like everything. There's no one situation. There's no one right way to do it, because it depends on your question, it depends on your population, it depends on if you're looking at the pill or so this is, we're not trying to overwhelm, but it's overwhelming. So yeah, it's kind of, we're just in the collect the data so you can tell us how to do this in the context of your question of interest.
This is a good question. So, do we know how well correlated plasma hormone levels to brain hormone levels are? Look at that response.
No, but yes, there are people looking at this using animal models, and Patricia Porsu, her group looks at animal models of hormonal contraception and hormones, and they've found a pretty, they're pretty consistent between the hippocampus or the cortex and blood measures, but that's absolutely a question that I think of all the time. Especially when it comes to the birth control pill, because it's like, anyway, would love to get coffee with all of you and talk about all of this in depth. But anyway, that's all.
This is an excellent question. Oh, we'll go to you next. 1 second, sorry. Any advice for if senior scientists refuse or prevent you from collecting or analyzing gender or sex metrics? So, and this may not be malicious in any way. It might just not be something that the senior scientist is interested in. I had an experience with this, and I sent a very well-written email linking to a bunch of different papers. It was kind of like a pitch. Pitching why it's so important to be collecting this stuff. Because if you actually make a scientific argument for it, which we have, this really can sway your PI's mind. So that would be my best advice. Often it's kind of, people are hesitant because it's like, oh, another thing to add. But if you explain why that other thing is so important, I think that can really help. Does anyone have experience with that? Cool. Louisa.
Well, thank you so much for this roundtable. My question is about, like, historically there's been this issue of like pathologizing, especially trans people's experiences in their brains and their bodies, and also using them as like a proxy for better understanding sex and gender, like teasing it apart for the sake of cis people. And as much as like I want to incorporate more gender diversity in my own work, sometimes I worry about like rushing too much without giving kind of guidelines to people who work in gender diversity without having their work kind of pathologize, maybe accidentally, maybe kind of purposefully, trans people specifically. And I just wondered if you guys think about that in creating standards of best practice and like incorporating community members in kind of deciding what questions are relevant, especially because we know so little about the trans experience.
Thank you for that question. And yes, it's super important to make sure that we're finding that balance between being inclusive and being exploitative in a sense, or doing more harm than good because we're not doing it carefully. So thank you for that. And yes, I think to your point, engaging community members and stakeholders in the designs of our studies is essential to make sure that we're representing people the way that they want to be represented. For the standard, yes, we are doing that. And it's an interesting process, as we've got far to go. But what sort of questions people are wanting to have represented about gender identity, gender affirming care, different gender affirming surgeries, felt gender, all of these sorts of questions and more. And yeah, just making sure that those are in the best, clearest, most inclusive language while still being very, very clear. So yeah, it's a process, but I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of making sure that trans and gender diverse people are included in the process from start to finish is really essential there. Thanks.
Yes, I also agree that PPI involvement is very important. We also have studies like this in Tübingen, and there we really seek to have affected people. So this is not only transgender; it could be any subject you study. It's always a good idea to include affected people or subject like, okay, animal you cannot really ask, but to really take that perspective and be it in the study planning, but also it's very important for us to include them along the entire way. Also analysis, what could be hypotheses, but also the analysis and also presentation of data. What do they think? So there is an actual big movement at the moment for more inclusion along the entire scientific process of studying sensitive subjects. Yes.
But I think all of this highlights just how important it is to just work with other experts and work with people. So one thing that's a little dicey is that we're like, yeah, include all these reproductive variables, they're so fascinating, but not everyone has to be an endocrinologist. Like, it doesn't have to be everyone's main interest. And that being said, we're asking you, in the interest of open science and data pooling and things like that, to collect these data and collect these variables. But if someone is not a gender researcher or something like that, and they take this variable that we've encouraged them to collect, and they say, oh, I have found a difference, that's just enough knowledge to potentially be kind of dangerous if they're like, we found this difference, and like it's significant, and the human mind is very good at creating narratives. So that's just, all of this is more encouragement to collect data so that we can all benefit from the data we're collecting, but also learn from each other, and you don't all have to become reproductive health researchers, but work with us. And then we can hopefully be more nuanced and sensitive in these findings that we're hopefully going to discover by collecting these data.
Now, we've got a couple more questions. I want to do it rapid fire. We're going to try and get it through all of them, including yours. But I'm just going to start with one from the app. So for Brain Bank, is it only MRI from the host sites, or can external sites contribute data if the standard is collected?
This is something that we are actively trying to figure out. Currently, we are just confined to, we are IRB approved for the Universities of California campuses, but we are working to figure out how we can expand sites who contribute, because while it is easy to say, give us more data, we want that data to be consistent, usable, harmonizable, and really clean. So we're starting with what we can manage and maintain, but that we do have an eye towards how we can make this more expansive. But that being said, the standard, which is what makes the Brain Bank possible, will be available for everyone. So while it doesn't have to be explicitly Brain Bank data, you can absolutely host your data set on Open Neuro, and it will be available in the same way, and you'll have the common variables. So that should not be something you're waiting for, rather than just getting started.
Alrighty, we have 3 more, including yours. This is a quick one, I think. In psychiatry, we see such a high prevalence in women, for example, PTSD. Does the menstrual cycle provide a unique opportunity for personalized medicine when it comes to intervening and treating women? Yes, definitely. Fantastic thing to do and to use as a model. Would you like to ask your question?
Sure. Hi, my question relates to, you seem to kind of say that we mainly need to know which cycle phase a woman is in. And also, I obviously agree that if we measure the hormones, we have no clue about which cycle phase a woman is in. But on the other, and Christine, and we have discussed a lot already, but on the other hand, I keep having the feeling that I have more information if I have the actual hormone data, so the actual hormone level. Or in another way, that question maybe can be phrased in the sense that, is it mainly the variance within the single woman, like across the cycle, that counts? Or is it the absolute hormone level that gives me some information about the brain?
That's a really good question. I think it's important to ask that and see investigate both. From my understanding, there's a lot of really exciting work coming out around variability within the individual, and that it's actually that variability that is driving a lot of the effects that we see. So I would say put your energy there personally. Any thoughts?
Yes, I also agree that it seems to be mainly fluctuations of hormones affecting mental well-being as well. So it's probably more like the within fluctuations. And I do agree that if possible, it's really good to have the hormones in addition, because there you can also see if, maybe there is an underlying hormonal disorder or something off. Of course, you could see that with a irregular cycle as well, but you have this check if you have the hormones. But it is also expensive, but it's definitely good to have.
Final question. So I'm currently studying sex difference in psilocybin, a psychedelic drug. I see significant differences between sexes. Cool. But when trying to explain why these happen, all I can find are studies in males, typical. How can I proceed? How can I find experts in this field? Thanks. That's a really good question. I think proceed. Maybe you're the first one that has looked at this, so keep looking at it, try and publish it, start the discussion. I think it's probably a question to the field of psilocybin use in general, whether sex differences emerge. It's something I've actually thought about, have had no experience in. But I would just say go with it. Why not? It's...
Absolutely. Please do. I'll read it. But also, there are known, the differences in metabolizing medicines and things between sexes is consistent. So if anything, you can just draw on hey, this isn't weird that we're seeing these differences because insert medication here, men and women process it differently and have different reactions, have different dosage needs, et cetera. But yeah, that's part of the cool stuff. When you start asking these questions, there's so much there. So you just moved a rock that all of a sudden has a 3-mile hole, deep hole in it. Go down there, figure out what's down there, and let us know.
And if you need any assistance in how to do this, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us or the community, since we are very eager to help and to really drive this forward. So don't hesitate, just reach out and we can also give you some advice on how to design the studies.
Which is a beautiful way to finish. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining and your wonderful questions. That was a lovely finish.